Hi, I'm Antonio Centeno, the founder of Real Men Real Style. Today we're going to be talking about the best dressed men at the 2012 Oscars, and I'm going to be going into a little bit of detail about why and who I decided to talk about. Okay, if you haven't already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. By doing that, these videos will come right to you. In addition, grab our free 47-page ebook on men's style and go ahead and like this video if you like it. All right, so why am I talking about this? I don't normally talk about the Oscars or things like this, but I received quite a few emails this morning and I decided that it's important to talk about this because the Oscars have really, and here we can see it's the 84th Academy Awards. So it's one of those things that they used to have less weight because most men knew how to dress. Over the last 50 years, though, most men, it seems like, have forgotten how to dress. And so the Academy Awards in general are given a lot more weight. And a lot of the questions I received this morning were asking about contemporary black tie and about these guys that were, it almost appeared like they were really pushing the envelope. And men are just looking for answers. They're looking for icons to emulate. Now, I want to be very clear. This is not reality. And here's Robert Downey Jr. Overall, usually a pretty sharp dresser, but he is dressed by his fashion consultants, and it's one of those things we can tell here that he is not in classic black tie. He does have the peak lapels, I'll give him that, but he's wearing a black shirt with obviously not a black bow tie, and I can't see his shoes, but overall we get this feeling that he's really trying to, at the end of the day, I look at it like he's in a performance. He is a presenter, but he was looking to create a little bit of stir with what he dressed. And here is a perfect example of how you can see this is theater. So Sacha Baron Cohen, he shows up as the dictator. So he tries to continue to play the actor who he did in the movie. And really, throwing all this, I think it was Bisquick or something on Ryan Seacrest. It's like a continuation of the movie, in my opinion. And comedians, we had Zach and Will. Obviously, they are wearing jackets. They are wearing some type of formal garb. It looks like they're trying to go with some type of white tie. I can't see the tails in the back. But I can tell you that it comes off as a performance. And for these guys, I understand. They're comedians. But at the end of the day, you've got to remember that we are watching artists in and around artists honoring other artists. And so you're going to see a lot of creative black tie. This isn't a representation of reality. Remember that. Now, so who are men that are doing this right? Who are men that I think kept it pretty simple? It seems like a lot of the Europeans do a pretty good job, especially the more serious actors like Colin Firth. I thought this was a perfect example. He's got a shawl lapel. He's got the pocket square. We also can see he's got the showing just a bit of cuff down here. He's got the black bow tie. And at the end of the day, a perfect example of how you should dress for the Academy Awards. All right. And we'll move right over to one of the winners of last night. Again, a Frenchman. We've got Jean Dujardin. And we can see with Jean is that really he's got the basics down. He's wearing a peak lapel. He doesn't have a pocket square, but we can see he is showing just a bit of cuff. The watch is pretty simple. Although, I would have gone perhaps with something even a little bit more simple. I can't tell if he's wearing a waist covering, but that's fine as long as I can't tell. And he is wearing, he's got a wing collar along with his black tie. So pretty simple, exactly what we're looking for. Also his hair, slicked back, exactly what I would expect for black tie. Another winner, we've got, who is it? Michael. He is one for Best Director, I believe. Hassan, I'm not even going to try to pronounce Michael's last name. In any case, congratulations to him. I can see that he doesn't have a waist covering. Right there, he should have at least a cummerbund or a waist jacket. But at the end of the day, he kept it buttoned. He didn't button the lower button. And peak lapels, black tie, although it looks like that black tie, he could have gone with a little bit larger. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to complain. The guy followed the rules. He looks great. He's up there accepting his Oscar, and that's really, all I could ask. Now, here I thought was interesting, and this is Christopher Plummer did a great job, I think, of pulling off. He went with a velvet jacket, and everything about it. He also has the notch lapels, but I thought that overall he pulled it off pretty well. So here's a good example of a guy pulling off something that I wouldn't have expected a younger man to be able to pull off. Now we've got Jason Segel, I believe, and I like his tie here. A little bit larger than I would expect, but you can tell that he tied it himself. Looks like it's navy or a bit of blue in there with his black lapel. It still works fine. My only thing is you can tell he doesn't have a waist covering here, as I can see the bottom of his jacket. And the waist covering is important. Let me get an example of. I think I just closed it, but no, it's important. Now, Jonah Hill. A lot of people are going to give him a lot of flack for wearing the black. I don't think it was that bad. What impressed me about Jonah actually was the fit of his jacket. He's a little bit larger of a young man, and here he is wearing a jacket that's more fitted, is making his chest look a bit pronounced, giving him some waist suppression. Overall, I thought the fit of his jacket made up for a lot. It would have looked a lot better if he had worn a classic white tuxedo shirt, and again, he's going to get a lot of flack for this, but overall, everything else, he could have shown a little bit of cuff, even though the black, it wouldn't really have mattered too much. But I think that wearing the white would have given him actually a slimmer look versus this straight big black look that he was going with. Brad Pitt, always pretty simple and classic. I think he's wearing a Tom Ford here. I didn't really care for. I thought it was a bit baggy on him, especially with his thinner build. And also, he didn't show any cuff. But at the end of the day, guys, come on, we're not looking at Brad Pitt here. George Clooney, another example of a man who dresses pretty simple, dresses very elegantly, and at the end of the day, how many of us here are looking at George? We're looking at the, and this probably goes to another bigger point, is the Oscars really the men's dress? I'm probably one of the only guys that's in the world that's going to be putting up a video on this, because we're mostly focused on the women and their dresses, and I'm not going to challenge that. At the end of the day, though, guys, it's about keeping it classic, keeping it simple, and George does a pretty good job, and he went with the notch lapels as well. He does this quite a bit, so I'm not really going to fault him there. My only thing is, why did he button that bottom button? But hey, it's George Clooney. Now, Bradley Cooper, overall pretty good, went with the shawl lapel. You can't see a full picture, but the fit was pretty decent. His facial hair, wasn't a big fan of it. It just didn't look complete. Now, at a lot of the after Oscar parties, you started seeing actors who, were just there really to be seen. So we see Jon Hamm, considered one of the better dressed men in and around the area. This is where you start to see the contemporary black tie. He wasn't receiving an award, so I don't think that he had to actually wear true black tie. We can see he has the peak lapels. The problem with, wearing a necktie is that I can't tell, this isn't really black tie, because I can see it looks like plastic buttons. And it would have been nice to see a little bit of cuff on here, would have completed the look. But to me, this is something, except for the trimming. I mean, it's got looks like satin on the lapels, and it's got a satin right here. This, I can tell, obviously it's not a suit, but if I would have been just looking at it without the satin, it would have almost been a suit. Here we see Tom Cruise with Katie Holmes, and again, it's the satin that immediately tells me this is black tie, and he's got a pocket square, which is nice, but again, he's wearing a necktie and going for that non-bow tie contemporary look. And for Tom, because he's not super tall, he definitely should have shown some cuff, but again, it's Tom Cruise, so. And here's a perfect example of how you should dress. Jason, again, another European or English gentleman showing us how to do it over here in the West Coast. But at the end of the day, how many of us are looking at Jason? I think we're all looking at Rosie. Finally, I'd like to bring up Oogie the dog. as believe it or not, this dog wore a bow tie, and I think did a great job. Here's another picture of Jon, and we can see actually as he's holding up the Oscar that his jacket fit was pretty good, because we don't see the jacket bunching up as he raised up his arm. We can see that he's got a smaller arm sky here, armhole basically, in which it allowed him to have more flexibility in movement. Okay, guys, the point I'm trying to make here is that the Oscars, it's about tradition. It's about simply following the rules. And, so we've got this group picture. The ladies, obviously, that's where the focus is at. Oogie the dog here is pretty cute. But then we have this gentleman here in the center who didn't follow black tie. And it just stands out. And it's almost the attention's kind of focused on him and not for a good reason. And that would be my argument why most men should follow tradition and go with black tie. Obviously, you've got Sasha, you've got Will. These comedians, they're going to be pushing the boundaries. But I think they could have, at the end of the day, that's expected. The big points I'd ask you to take away is to remember that the Oscars are not reality, that you've got tons of egos, a lot of men going for attention, but at the end of the day, you're never gonna go wrong just going with the classic and deferring the attention to your date and coming off as a gentleman. All right, this has been Antonio Centeno with Real Men, Real Style. I will see you in the next video.